I love you too. Welcome to another episode of Live Yielded. Are y'all excited? This is amazing. Episode 2. Today is going to be amazing. Get ready because, we're going to go there. I'm just excited. And so if we're ready, let's go on and take a seat. All right. So last time we talked about yielding yourself. And I'm very excited about today's topic. I'm calling this our introductory series as we just walk in this journey of Live Yielded and see where the Lord takes us. But today we're going to talk about yielding to purpose. Yielding to purpose. And so everything that we said last time, yielding yourself, understanding that everything about you is part of what you yield. So you don't yield, I guess, whatever you think you're yielding and then separate that from your family or separate that from your career. All of that is a package. So you basically are the package that has everything. But so that package is totally wrapped in purpose. And the purpose for which God created you, if you remember, we were talking about understanding the value of you, not in a vain way, but truly accepting, first of all, that you are a gift to humanity. You are a gift to the earth. In this time, the century you're born into, all of that is part of God's plan and purpose for your life. And you're really owning that, not being ashamed about it. It's not about pride, but understanding that I have something to give to the world. I have something that only I can give to the world. And so when it comes to purpose, just very amazing things that have always made made a mark on me, even just about us. Singing, for example, right? I'm into music and all that. Do you realize that your voice print is absolutely unique? Nobody in this world will ever have your voice print. So just start with that. Even if you're, identical twin, your voice will never, ever sound identical. Then you have our thumbprints, right? Or fingerprints. Nobody in all of creation will ever have the same fingerprint as you. So all these little things, when you start thinking about them, it's really, your uniqueness is more than us just saying something like to encourage you or make you feel good about yourself. It's true. There literally is only one of you, right? And when we read all these things that people will say, like, stop wasting time trying to be somebody else. They already exist. If you're busy trying to be somebody else, then who's going to be you, right? So you have to own your uniqueness. You have to own that you are different. You have to own that you're here on purpose. But how do you know all of that if you don't know your purpose, right? So purpose. The question of the ages. What is purpose? And I'm going to quote this man that I love so much, Miles Monroe. Many of us probably are familiar with him, but he was the first person that ever at least gave me somewhat of an understanding of really understanding what purpose was, at least at a very fundamental level. And I was at this conference, I don't remember where it was, but this was maybe 10 years ago, 10, 12 years ago. And he talked about when there is an invention, the invention itself, very fundamental. He said the invention itself will not even fully understand its potential because it's the creator of the invention that will know everything that he has put in it. And he was saying it in a way that it's like this iPad, right, that I'm using. There's probably a lot of functions in this iPad that I actually don't even know how to use. That if somebody, the creators of this iPad, were to come and be like, oh, by the way, did you know you could do this, this, and that? They'll be like, yo, you can do all of that with this iPad? I don't know because I'm not the creator of it, you know? It's like even your phone, when somebody comes and show you something, oh, you know you could do this with your phone, you're like, oh, really? I didn't know you could do that. Like, it's the same concept. And so when we were talking about yielding ourselves, even in the place that as we walk with God more and more, he's unveiling things in us that are a surprise to us in a way, but to him it's not a surprise. So first of all, understand that as you are growing, one thing that's also equally fascinating, I guess all this stuff is just fascinating. Your spirit is ageless, right? Your spirit is ageless, especially where we have been born from above. Our spirit being one with the Spirit of God, our spirit is ageless. It's our soul that is growing. So even when we talk about maturing and all of that, it's the soul. And it's a thing of your soul knowledge catching up to your spirit knowledge. And so that's why even when God is communicating with us in the spirit, our spirit knows everything about our life. And our soul is trying to catch up to that. And scriptural reference for this is what Jeremiah 29 we were talking about last time. He said, I know the plans I have for you. I already have these plans. Like, I'm not discovering a plan for you. I already know the plan I have for you. And it's a plan to prosper you, to bring you to an expected end. But even before getting to that, in Jeremiah 1, he tells Jeremiah, before I formed you, I already knew you. And I'm the one who ordained you to be who you were called to be for your generation. I ordained you a prophet. And last time, again, we were talking about how in Psalm he said, all the days of your life were written out before yet you were ever formed. So just imagine somebody has written the full book of your life, and you're only on chapter 5. There's all these other chapters that you don't even know what's in them, but the author literally knows everything that's in those chapters. So as you're going from chapter 5 to 6, to you, it may be a surprise, but to God, it's not a surprise. It's like, that was already there. Like, I've already written it. Like, there's nothing new in this. So how do we then translate that when it comes to yielding ourselves, and then now on the next step, yielding our purpose? Yielding to purpose? It's in a place where, and it really begins with that initial surrender of yielding yourself, because once I've accepted, okay, God, in your hand is where I will ever find the true fulfillment of everything I've ever been made to be. And so that already makes you willing to be led. It makes you willing to follow, because you understand, okay, this person will not lead me to a place that I'm incapable of. He will not lead me to a place that I cannot function in. So if God is leading me to this place, the question then becomes, it's like, okay, God, what have you put in me that functions in this place? Because that's where sometimes we find timidity, we find fear, all these things kicking in, because it's a version of ourselves that we know versus the version of ourselves that God is trying to introduce us to. And so there's a version of you that you know, but there's a version of you that God knows. And so now the question always is, or not even the question, but the challenge will be for you to become acquainted with the version of you that God knows. And so that version of you that God knows is the version that has an assignment and a purpose on this earth. And so that's where even how we were saying getting married and attached to things, because of our limited understanding of them, we become comfortable even placing labels on ourselves, right? And again, I'll use myself as an example. I am very comfortable, for instance, in the place of leading worship. I'm very comfortable because that's something I've done for so long. And once upon a time, it was new. But after I got into it, I got comfortable with understanding it. God taught me things in there. I was like, okay, I understand this place. So then in a season or in a time when God was like, okay, this is not you anymore, I was just like, no, like, I know how to do this. Like, why would you not want me to do this? Like, I actually know how to do this. And it was like, no, but I need you to do something else that he knows he has also given me ability for, but I don't know that. And so now the willingness to say, okay, God, I'm willing to let go of that person and walk into this place that you're leading me to, which is new to me, but to you it's not new, because you actually know that you've already given me the ability to be able to walk in this place because that's who you know me to be. And so even that mental acceptance in anything, oh my gosh, like let's not even go deep in ministry, you know, like even career-wise, education-wise, the expectations that not only people have of us, but we have of ourselves, you know? And society has placed this plan and path, even though we're in the 21st century, even though right now we know that there's many other ways that somebody can succeed by discovering your gift and just pursuing that. But we still have this thing in our mind where if somebody doesn't follow the norm, it's like they have to be successful. If they're not successful, it's like, yo, there's this other path. Just go back to the regular path. Like, what are you doing? Just fall back to what we know is supposed to work. Go to school, get a job, get a degree, get married, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't know, one thing about me, I don't even know where it came from, but I'm so grateful for, I was always so afraid. I think growing up and seeing people experience this, I was so afraid. I said, God, I never want to be 40 years old and then regret that I'm doing something that I'm not supposed to do and have to restart over. And I'm saying this as a teenager. Like, it took me a long time to ever decide my career path. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Like, people asked me, I was like, I really don't know what I want to do. But I knew I did not want to do what I'm not supposed to do because I did not want to be 40 and regret. And I don't know, it was just 40. 40 was the age. I said, I don't want to be 40 years old and then have to restart because I find that I'm doing something that I don't like. Because I'll see it all the time, people that were in what we call successful careers, like whether it was doctors, engineers, lawyers, this is for Africans, you know, the three acceptable careers. But I'll see these people turning back from them and they're like, this was not what I was supposed to do. And then at 40, they're starting like on a completely different journey. And so I just always had this thing in the back of my mind. I'm like, I don't want to do that. Like, I don't want to waste time like that. I want to just know what I'm supposed to do and do it. And I think it was around 16, I discovered architecture. So I love art and I love architecture. Oh, I love math rather. So architecture for me was like, I don't know how I discovered it, but I was like, oh my gosh, that's what I'm going to do. And I was so passionate about it. Fast forward, finish high school, get into college, start my college career. Then it's like halfway through that, God is like, no, this is not what you're supposed to do. I'm like, what do you mean this is not what I'm supposed to do? This is what I really want to do. Like, this is what I'm very passionate about. Like, and I'm very good at this. Like, I always tell people, you know how some people get called out of school and it's like, yeah, I don't want to go to school. No, that's not me. Like, I liked school. I liked to study. Just as a person, I like to learn. So that was where I wanted to be. And so when God starts calling me out of that, I'm like, why? It was a struggle. Oh my gosh. It did not make sense. And what made it harder was my family didn't understand it either. So it's not even like somebody's backing me up. This is literally, will you follow God? You're standing on your own if you follow God because nobody else is supporting your choice right now. But ultimately, after all of that, I was just like, well, God, I will follow you. And it was really hard because then it's like, what are you doing with your life? This is not making sense. That's not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to have gone to school. You're supposed to do this. You're supposed to do that. And so I had to begin to really say, like, okay, God, like, I want my purpose more than anything else. I want my purpose more than anything else. And God started unveiling things to me about who He had called me to be and the things that I was called to do and all of that. But so even just from that, when we're talking about yielding to purpose, understand that it's not always going to be comfortable. It's not always going to be comfortable. We started talking about Abraham last time. Abraham, come out of your father's house. Come out of everything that is familiar. Come out of what you love. Come out of even what you thought was going to be the path. Had God not come and interrupted Abraham's life at that time, there was an expected path for him to follow. And God is like, I want you to come out of all of that because I have something else that I have for you. You're going to be a nation for me. And sometimes it's like, God, I have to give up what I want to do for what you want to do. And it's only when you have yielded yourself that you truly will find joy and fulfillment in being able to live out the will of God because ultimately that's what He created you for. So that's really the thing that will actually satisfy you the most. And it's all these things we read in the Bible, you know, like it's so easy to read it. It's what, 2 pages in the Bible, 3 pages of the story, and it's like that's somebody's entire life. But when you actually try to put yourself in that person's shoes to really understand, listen, like it's not as easy as what we're reading it to be. It was an acknowledgement to say, okay, how do you even begin to go to your parents today and say, okay, hey, God is calling me out of here. Like He's sending me to India. And here's something, who do you know in India? Nobody. Where are you going to go to India? I don't know. He's going to show me when I get there. Okay, what are you going to do? I don't know. He just said, I need to go there. Do you hear how crazy you sound? You sound crazy. But it has to be a determination inside of you to say, this is what God has said, and I don't need to understand it. I just need to follow what God has said. And that's what following purpose is. That's what yielding to purpose is. God will sometimes tell you, hey, move to so-and-so place, or this is the career path I have for you. And it will look like nothing is working. What is it that makes you stay on track when you don't see the results that you think you should see? You got to know something deeper. You got to know that, okay, this is what God has assigned for me in this place, in this time. It's His purpose that I'm following. And that's It's a posture of heart because ultimately it's a personal walk. It's a personal walk. It's not you and somebody else. Yes, by God's grace, He brings us companionship sometimes along the way in different times, in different seasons. There will be people there with you to encourage you and all that. But ultimately, it's very personal. It's you and God. So personal to the point that even when it came to the promise of Isaac, it was Abraham and God dealing with, hey, you have to give your son. I always wonder, like, what happened when Abraham told Sarah? Could he even have told her that? When it comes to your purpose with God, yielding to purpose, it's a place where you shut off every other voice to say, I'm not listening to nobody else. I'm not taking any other opinion. What God has said is the only thing that I'm sticking to. And so when we look at people that we admire, people who have even made an impact in this world that we live in, everybody's journey always had a place where they had to be tenacious, they had to persevere, they had to hold on against all odds. What was it that made them know, like, why aren't you letting this go? Why don't you switch? Like, you've tried now. It's been 1 year, it's been 2 years, it's been 3 years, it's been 10 years. You're still going? Like, why don't you let this go and just do something else? But there was something in them that said, no, this is the purpose. This is what God has said. I'm going to stick to it because one day I know I'm going to see what God has said come to pass. And so that's something for all of us where it comes to fulfilling or yielding to purpose and pursuing our purpose. Understand that when the seed goes in the ground, it doesn't sprout overnight, right? And I always think about this, like, let's say there was a seed that was planted right here. I could walk all over. You wouldn't know that there was anything in the ground. You wouldn't. But so what if the person who had watered that seed also forgot about the seed and wasn't watering it? Versus, what is it that makes a person come and keep watering a place where it looks like nothing is happening, but they water it because they know of what they've placed in the ground? Right? And so I know there's something there, and I keep watering that thing. I keep watering that thing. I keep watering that thing. That's what yielding to purpose is. And a perfect example for me, honestly, sometimes I sit and I look at Papa Lo, and I'm like, you know, on the surface level, because I think sometimes it's very easy to set men of God high on a pedestal, and we should absolutely honor them. But the joy I have is even in how plain he is about his humanity and always pointing us back to say, it's only by the grace of God that I'm doing this thing, so that you never even think of me more highly than you should. And just his honesty and transparency in that, and then in living it out day by day, the willingness to say, I'm always going to be available for the purpose for which God has placed me for, regardless of how I feel. Whether I'm sick or not, whatever has to happen, I am going to be found on task with the thing that God has given me to do. And so even just watching, I don't know about you guys, but I think like it makes you really look at your life and say, man, am I on purpose? Like, God, like, what am I doing? Let me be on purpose. God, what is my purpose? So I can be on purpose because he is on purpose. He is yielded completely to his purpose, whatever the cost. And sometimes he'll say things and it sounds funny, but I'm like, man, he's saying this and it's actually real. Like, nobody can come between him and what God has called him to do. Nobody. Like, you will become an enemy to him before you cause him to ever leave what God has told him to do. But that level of conviction, that level of conviction, it makes you self-reflect. It makes you check your heart. It makes you really check your yieldedness. You know, God, am I really yielded? Am I really yielded? Because it's very easy to say, God, I want your will for my life. God, I surrender. You know all these beautiful prayers we like to pray. God, I want what your heart wants, God. Let my heart beat for what your heart beats for. All these things we say. And that's really what God is looking for. But that's why it's so rare, and that's why these men of God that are fully yielded just stand out, because nobody is willing to pay that price. When God starts saying, hey, bring me your Isaac. No, God, this is the promised child. You gave me Isaac. Why do you want Isaac back? No. But to be able to say, okay, you can have him, whatever you gave to me. And I love what Hebrews says, that Abraham was willing to give him up, knowing that the same God that had given the promise was able to raise him back up if need be. that this promise was from God. So it's cool. You want it back? I'm going to give it to you. But that level of yieldedness, okay, God, where do you want me? What do you want from me? How do you want me to do this? What is the purpose? I'm here on purpose. Okay, cool. Like, let's go for it. And I think once we really can lock in on that, there will be a freedom in our life that we are all craving that we will truly have when we are willing to say, God, I'm going to live your purpose, live out the purpose that you have for my life no matter what. Because then it's like you're living for that audience of one. You know how we say it? Like you're living for the audience of one. Ultimately, the only person you have to please is him. And he is the one who's looking at you and saying, okay, I made this thing to function this way. Like, let me adjust it. Let me make it right. Like, let me make it function to the fullness of how it's supposed to function. And I immediately think of the clay in the potter's hand. And I was sharing with a friend of mine, I think this was last week, and it was so interesting. We were talking about how the grace of God is so real, and we're talking about purpose. You know, just consider us, and this really will show you just how much better than us God is. Like, when you can get to the point to say, I thank God that God is not a man. But just imagine you made something, right? Like, I make clothes. Imagine you designed something, or you wrote, whatever it was, you were doing something that you made, and it wasn't right. It didn't look right, or it didn't work right. What would you do? Yes, you'll try to fix it, you'll try to put it together, but there's sometimes a point where things get like, okay, no point, let me start over, because this thing is not working. And yet God is so committed to, like, God doesn't, okay, forget you, like you're not working. God's grace is that grace that literally will work with you, be patient, and help you, put you together so that you can function in the purpose that he has. It's like he knows what he has put in you, and he's not going to give up on you. He's not going to give up on you the way that we do. And so when you think of purpose, purpose is such a popular conversation in the world today, but I'm hoping to just give you a different perspective that you can add to that outlook when you're thinking of purpose. That you won't only just think of it in the generic sense, like, okay, you're here to fulfill something, you're here on assignment, because all of that is absolutely true. But I want you to begin to think of it in the sense of there are things in you that you have not even uncovered yet, that they were in you from the foundations of the earth. That it's not, oh, we are discovering this as we go because it's also a surprise to God. You know how we think, oh, because I learned to speak so many languages, therefore I could become an interpreter. But God is looking at it as, oh, no, you're already an interpreter, so that's why you already have the ability to learn many languages, so it's all kind of working. We're looking at it from walking back, but God is looking at it from the end backward. And so it's like you'll think, you know how we were saying last time, God is taking you from point A to B, He took you from A to Z to X to Y and brought you back around before you got to B. So you're thinking, oh, I went all around these places for me to learn all these things that are going to help me to be. But God is looking at it as like, no, all these things were already a part of you. And so you were just working it out because this end point that to you is the end point is actually like in reverse. Because he sees the end from the beginning. He sees the end from the beginning. And so when you really begin to see these things like that, it's, man, the intentionality of God, you really will value even where you were born. You begin to even value your parents. You begin to value even where you're from. You begin to value where you are in a different way because you understand, like, He's working backwards with me, whereas I feel like I'm growing into something. You think you're growing into it, but you're not. It's like God is meeting. He's waiting for you on this other side. It's like, oh, we're going to meet. Come on, like, I already have this place set right here. And this is where purpose becomes so key, like pursue purpose above all things, because this world will try to give us accolades and achievements and rewards that would make us feel good. And really, you have to be so careful because many times it's the satisfaction of our flesh that we don't even realize. Because that success is only appealing to the soul. It's not appealing to your spirit. It's something to make your soul feel like, man, yeah, I have value, like I'm doing something with my life. Why? Why are you not doing something with your life when you're walking in the purpose of God? Because to the standard of men, you don't feel like that's something that you can really say, right? But when you begin to understand that, God, your purpose is bringing something to fruition and to fulfillment that already was. It's like I'm catching up to it. Then you begin to understand that there's really places in your life that you cannot walk into because they don't respond to this version of you. They respond to that other version of you. And so you have to grow into that person. And what we say grow into is really embrace that person. That's where this mindset thing is very important that we started with talking about in Romans 12, verse 2, and how the NLT really breaks it down. It says, don't conform to how these people think and the patterns of this world. Because King James says, be not conformed to this world. That word, like if you look at it, it's saying it's the eon. It's like the era, like the norm of the time. Don't be conformed to that pattern. Like bring in a different type of mindset. And so that mindset already exists. That mindset is already there. It's just for you to now adopt it and embrace it. And that's why it sounds so simple. It says, follow the Spirit and you're not going to fulfill the lusts of the flesh. Like it almost sounds so elementary. It's like, hey, if you do this, this is what you're going to get. It's in the practice of it that you find out really obeying God is actually not that hard. Honestly, it's all the other things that the soul suggests to us that becomes the block. It's all the other things that come to sound like, oh, is this really possible, that make it hard? But really, it's as easy as a choice. It's as easy as a choice. Literally, will you do it or will you not? And so when you have to yield to purpose, that's where you find yourself, to say like, God, I am willing to be who you made me to be. I don't care what nobody else is going to think about it. I don't care whether or not they agree, because at the end of the day, ultimately, you're the one that I have to give account to. Like, it's like you created the iPad, and you're going to look at it and say, okay, did this iPad function to the fullest that it was supposed to function? Or was it broken? Like, was something messed up with it? Like, was there a malfunction in this thing that I created? He is the one who gets to judge that, not nobody else. They didn't make you. So people are labeling us. Some people are calling you malfunctioned, and God is not calling you malfunction. And so you're scared of being labeled that, when to God is like, hey, you're right in the place where I've called you to be. You're right in the purpose that I've called you to be. So then when I look back at myself, in those times when I was resting, I was like, but I want to be in school. And I think somebody asked that question last week, and we were talking about vision, seeing the vision for you. That's where it started. I had to ask God, who am I? Who am I? Because society is telling me I need to be in college right now. Society is telling me I need to be doing so and so right now. Society is telling me, like, this is not, I'm hearing all this, like, who do you say that I am? And as I began to walk in that, man, there's a confidence that I had in God that I don't care where you make me stand. Like, I don't feel like I'm less than anybody because I am right where God called me to be. But it took time, but yet I understood it was just a choice. I was like, why was I wrestling with this so long? Why was I wrestling with this so long? Because some of us, we get intimidated. You stand in the midst of other people, you feel like, dang, I'm not on the level of these other people. Like, they have all this, they have all that, they're doing this, they're doing that. Like, I can't stand in the same space as them. Why? Like, if you're standing in the purpose that God has, you better stand tall in the purpose that He has called you to be. Stop trying to be who you're not. Stop trying to do what other people are doing if it's not what you're meant to do. Walk in your purpose. Yield to your purpose. And when you're willing to yield to purpose, then you're also willing to yield to the method and the path that God is using to take you there, even when it doesn't look like the path that somebody else is taking. Because you recognize that this is my path. This is what He laid out for me. And He is achieving something in me here. He is doing something in me here. He is fulfilling something in me here. And I'm willing to walk that out. I don't care about you on your path. Okay, great. You're doing good. And I can cheer you on. Awesome. Let's go. Keep going. But I'm paying attention to this right here, because this is what He's laid out for me. Yes. That's what yielding to purpose is. Yield to your purpose, whether it's in your career, whether it's in your call in life, whatever it is that God is unveiling to you. Be willing to say, God, your method, however you unveil it, whatever you have, because literally you have capacitated me for wherever it is that you want to position me. Accept it. That's it. It's as easy as accepting it. Accept yourself the way God made you, not the way somebody else made you. And that's really the relearning, right? That's the relearning. The Jeremiah, before I formed you, I knew you. So now I'm having to relearn who you knew. I'm having to relearn who you formed. I'm having to relearn what you spoke about that person, because right now, in just by virtue of being born in this earth, in this physical world, it was other things that were naming me, other things that were calling me out, other things that were saying things to me. That's where we even get into spiritual names. Why? Because your parents named you, and if they were not in tune, that means they completely gave you something completely opposite to what God has named you. And so desiring to go back to who, not even go back, desiring to be acquainted with the version of you that God knows. Desire to be acquainted with the version of you that God knows, because that person is the one that he sent on this earth for a purpose. And once you know that person, your purpose literally will just unfold like this. Amen? So yielding to purpose. All right. Woo. Amen. Amen, amen. So, all right, guys. Well, you know what time it is? Time for Ask Auntie Benz. Yeah. So, all right, let's do this. We're going to have a special guest join me up here, and then we're going to see how this goes and what questions we have. So let's do this.
Hey.
Our guest for Ask Auntie Benz today is the one and only Simeon.
Hello, how you doing?
Simeon.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
so
being
much.
here.
Thank you.
I can't wait to hear your question. All right.
Excited.
Go for it.
I have a question. Okay, so how do you keep your spirit aligned and charged for the yielding process when the flesh is in a hurry for success and purpose through the lens of the ideas and plans that you had set for yourself? When you see things moving fast in life, how do you encourage your spirit that the seed that you have planted and sown will produce in the timing that God sees better fit for you?
Wow, exactly. I was about to say, first of all, that sounded like a spoken word. Okay. No, that was good. Okay, so break it down for me.
Okay.
I feel like that was like 3 questions in one.
Yeah,
so let's
like
do the first one.
The first one, okay.
You said, how do
you keep your spirit aligned and charged for the yielding process when your flesh is in a hurry?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think if you try to do it the reverse way, we talked about like the body, because I think that's what a lot of us try to do.
Yeah.
And it's the mistake of, I don't know if I can blame the church for this necessarily, but where sometimes we teach principles and disciplines and do's and don'ts without dealing with the heart.
That's
and
good.
I think that is a byproduct. Like by default, you will be trying to do something that your spirit cannot sustain.
That's
it's
good,
like telling somebody, hey, like, come with me, like, I want you to fast. Like, kind of like how we've been on a fast in church. Somebody that's never fasted before, doesn't have the understanding behind it, or even just the, what we call spiritual stamina, right?
Yes.
It's like, okay, hey, you're going to go 6 to 6 with no water, no food. It's like, wait, what are you talking about?
That's
like,
right, yeah.
I don't know how to handle that.
Yes.
And it's something about when the spirit is cultivated, then the body will follow. So we shouldn't try to lead from body, soul, spirit. You have to deal with spirit first, and then the soul, and then the body. Because that's what he said. He said, if you follow the spirit, then you will not fulfill the lust of the flesh. So that literally is your answer, where you say, how do I keep my spirit in the yielded place, right?
Yes.
Or in a posture of yielding.
Yes.
It's when I'm dealing with the spirit, and if my spirit is yielded, my flesh, literally there's no room for my flesh, because it's not about stopping something. It's what has replaced that. You know how Papa Lo always says there's no void in the spirit.
No, yes.
So a lot of us will be like, oh, I don't want to do this no more. Okay, but what are you doing instead?
Wow, that's so
right?
good. Yes.
It's like, what has replaced that? So if your spirit is cultivated in a certain place, that's where sin falls off.
That's true.
You won't even know, oh, I used to think this, but I don't even think this, but when did it stop? You don't know.
You don't even know.
Because it happened in the spirit, and then your body just followed, and your soul, and then your body just followed.
So
I used to want to, I don't know, go out, whatever it was that you were struggling with. But as you began to invest in the spirit and follow the spirit, you will look back and be like, oh my gosh, wait a minute. I used to think this way. Oh, I used to talk like this. Oh,
That's true.
it just, you don't even know when it fell off. It fell off because you were just so
true.
busy following the Spirit.
That's so good.
So,
Thank
okay,
you.
your next part of
Yes.
this.
That was so good. Thank you so much. Next question was, when you see things moving fast in life, how do you encourage your spirit that the seed that you have planted and sown will produce in the timing that God sees better fit for you?
I guess, is that a
That was-
comparison
that
like you
was-
see?
mhm,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So if I see things moving fast as far as other people, like waiting for results,
Yeah.
is that what you mean?
Yes. When you see other people moving in their purpose and in the thing that they have for them, how do you encourage your spirit? Like, okay, God, I'm trusting your timing.
Yeah.
But when I'm in the industry that I'm in, how do I encourage my spirit? Like, wait for his timing because it's better.
And it's also an excellence thing, I think. I don't know what man of God said this, but I've also used that for myself, where he said, whether it was a crowd of millions or I was preaching to the 10, I was as excellent to the 10 as I was to the millions. And so I think there's something that God does when he's taking time to cultivate certain disciplines in us. Sometimes we're distracted by whether it's the crowd or whatever definition of success we have,
Yes.
versus taking account of what he's doing in me that will sustain where he's taking me. And so don't lose sight of the vision, because the seed is in the ground. The Bible literally says the mustard seed is the smallest, but it grows to be the biggest one, that all the birds are coming to get shade and rest in it, but it was the smallest one. And so keep sight of your vision, be inspired, see other people, rejoice and celebrate them, knowing also that whatever God has for you and what he's doing in you is also going to manifest and come to pass. So you have to stay encouraged in the vision that God has for you. Like, don't allow the success of other people to distract you from your own journey.
That's so
And
good.
I think spiritual maturity should tell us that in the times that God has kept us, what we like to say, God is hiding you.
Yes.
It's like the seed in the ground. It's being watered. Roots are going deep. So just because I'm not seeing something on the surface doesn't mean something is not happening beneath the surface,
That's so
right?
good, yes.
So there's something that is cultivating inside. And the depth of the roots is going to determine the height of that tree. So don't be distracted just because you don't see results up here,
Yes,
that you don't pay
yes.
attention to what's supposed to be happening internally.
That
Yeah.
makes sense. That's so good.
Amen.
That's
Is that all of it?
amazing. I have one more. Is that
Okay,
all
go
right?
ahead.
Can you just, for the last recap, when you said, because I loved it, when you said success is appealing to the soul, can you just touch on that last part? What did that mean? Like, that was so
Success
deep.
is appealing to the soul. Like, a lot of things we want to say, oh man, I achieved this, I
Yes.
achieved that, I did this, I did that. Is it for the glory of God? You know?
Yes.
Because if it's really for the glory of God, you will be so happy for the one soul that gives their
That's
life
so
to
good.
Christ. Because
Yes.
that's what the angels do. The Bible says they literally throw a party when one soul gives their life to the Lord.
Yes.
And so our perspective of success is, what is it that you're looking for? Because can I celebrate in the little that God does while, or even just the same, can I celebrate as much, let me say, can I celebrate as much in the little that God does as I would in the much that he does?
Yes.
Right?
So
Am I
good.
as grateful for the provision in the little as I would be for the provision in the much?
Right. Yes.
Am I as thankful here as I will be there? Like, what's the difference? What does it matter? If it's all for the glory of God, then the setting doesn't matter. God is glorified. That's all I care about.
Yes.
So be careful that you're not looking for what will make you feel like to say, oh man, I did that.
Yes. Yes.
That was good.
That's so good. Yes.
Versus, man, God got the glory.
Yes. Yes.
God is glorified.
I love
Yeah.
that. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
I hope I helped.
You
All
helped me
right,
so
guys,
much.
send me it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Those are really,
Thank you so much.
those are good questions. Those are really good questions. But that's it, guys. So that's all for Live Yielded today. And as always, we honor this platform. It's amazing, just the opportunity to be here. It's amazing being able to be a blessing to you. It's amazing just being able to touch lives all over the world. So however you want to be a blessing, please feel free. However the Spirit lays it on your heart, you can absolutely be a blessing. The information is going to be on your screen. But definitely listen on the go. This is also on podcast platforms. So wherever you listen to your podcast, you can go ahead and listen to this episode again. And until next time, all day, always, live yielded.